This is the chassis of a Bugaboo Cameleon 2, so not the current generation, but the one just before, and the one that was on the market, I would say the longest, or at least during the period when the Bugaboo Cameleon was at the height of its popularity as a stroller. And over the years, we've done a lot of videos that deal with the central locking mechanism on various models of Cameleon, including the Cameleon 2. We've shown how to open it up and various causes for why it can go wrong, which is not entirely down below at the central mechanism, but can also be up here. But these are a little bit scattered across our channel, and periodically we've had commentary from people saying that it can be hard for them to navigate from one video to the next. And sort of in tribute to this problem on this model, which has been a big part of our fixing history, we wanted to make a comprehensive guide to fixing the central locking mechanism on the Bugaboo Cameleon 2, and just kind of put all of the relevant information, how to open things up and the components and what can go wrong in one place. Okay, so the central locking mechanism is that mechanism responsible for folding down, folding up the stroller, and for locking the handle in both the forward-facing position and the reverse-facing position. So functioning normally, one would depress these buttons on the inside-facing faces of the handle, and you can fold the stroller down. You click them in again in order to fold the stroller up. Click them in again to get the reverse facing. So if at any of these points the handle refuses to lock in place or will not come out of any of these positions, so it's hard for you now to click this in and pull it over here, or at the point at which you get to this point it won't lock on one or both sides, same with going down, or you can't unlock it, then these are all problems related to the central locking mechanism of this chassis. Okay, so place number one to check when you're having trouble with this mechanism is up here, right at the handle extension mechanism, that mechanism which regulates the height of the handle. So if you'll notice on this stroller, there are screws. There was a time when this stroller was sold with screws here. Very often though, it has rivets. If it has rivets, you of course need to drill out the rivet. Otherwise, you might have screws. You might also have screws because at some point in the past, it's been fixed and the rivet was drilled out and it was replaced with screws. In any case, one point to check is up here. I'm just going to unscrew this. You can of course choose to, if you have rivets and it's difficult for you to drill them out, you can check the other points first. But if you have screws, it is easiest to check this first because it's the easiest thing to check. So click it up like this, and all you're going to check for is that you have your spring here. If you have it here, it means it hasn't fallen out of alignment, and it means that it hasn't gone missing in a previous time when somebody has attempted to fix this stroller. So check that your spring is here. It's in the middle of the handle, pointed upwards. It's going to actually fit onto a peg up in here as well, for a little positioning area. As long as the spring's there, then that's not the problem. The reason for the spring is this is the spring that loads the whole system. So if the spring isn't there, then there's nothing driving the wire in order to force the parts in the central element to lock in place. I suppose this is most relevant if you have screws and you suspect that the stroller has been opened up before up here. If you have rivets, I guess I would definitely check the other points first. Okay, the second point at which you can have trouble is right here under this button where the pin runs up the handle and attaches. Now it's different to open this up on either side. On this side where the brake handle is, there are a pair of screws. On the other, you'll have to pry the top plate off with a flathead screwdriver, and I'll show that in a moment. So opening up this side, you just detach these two screws as you would if you were dealing with a brake stuff, and then you can just pull off this entire handle. Okay, directly under here, you'll notice that there's this little metal plate. You can pop that out, and then you can actually slide this entire bit down if you'd like. This is one of the latest models of the Cameleon 2, and they did update things as they moved from the Cameleon 2 towards the Cameleon 3. On this one, you'll notice that the pin goes up and then bends to the side here. So all you need to make sure when you're opening up this point is that this pin is connected within this white assembly. In this case, with this later model, it means that the pin is actually bent to the side and that that little head that bends upwards this way has not actually accidentally bent outwards and thus is just sliding up and down within this channel. Now on the older Cameleon 2 model, the pin was straight and there were a pair of very tiny screws that clamped onto the pin. If you have that model, what you're going to need to do is to get a very small screwdriver. You can get like an electrical screwdriver set, for example, and check that those screws are tightly screwed against that pin such that when you pull this up, it takes the pin with it. On that model, the white part will move up and you'll notice that the pin does not slide with it. That means that the screws are not tightly enough inside. If you're having trouble depressing the button in the first place, it can be that this metal piece and this like frame around the hole here are out of alignment. So this plastic needs to be more or less correct right around there. And then you need to slip this piece in such that this little notched area is at the bottom. And if you can't quite get it in, it can be that there's like an extra white stopper here that can be pressed a little bit too far up. So you just want to pry that down carefully with a flathead screwdriver. And then on the side that doesn't have the notch, it has a little lip. Slide that in under first, then you can press it in. But as I said, if all of these parts aren't in alignment, it won't line up properly with the button in order to allow you to depress the button and activate the mechanism. Okay, just going to screw this in again. Okay, if you want to check this on the opposite handle, on the opposite arm, if it's this side that you have trouble with, you're going to need a small flathead screwdriver, and this might damage the plastic slightly. You need to press it into that crack and pop it up on one side, and that will allow you to remove the piece on that side as well. This is, on this model, it had this two-part button. We do have videos that show you how to deal with putting that piece back on if you have trouble with it. All right, so now we finally get to the area where most of the time trouble is. If you have not found the problem higher up on the arm, then we're going to have to open up the central assembly of this locking mechanism. If you are opening this up on the side that has the brake wire, it can be handy just to pull on this brake wire just above this point that holds the brake wire at the arm, and it'll kind of move it out of the way as you pry off this cap. To pry off this cap, you're going to need a flathead screwdriver. It's good to have two, one a bit larger like this and one a bit smaller for the inner ring, and a hammer. And you're just going to angle it under that cap and knock it in a bit. This will also do a little bit of damage to the plastic, but this is just has nothing to do with functions. Cosmetic is the word I was looking for. Now under this cap is a second locking washer, and you do want to get your screwdriver between the two because you're going to take that off separately. Work your way around and try not to break this cap. On the inside of this cap is also a locking washer, and you're going to want to reapply this cap afterwards, of course. So, there we go. There on the inside of the cap, again, is also a locking washer. And then there's one here. For this one, it's a little bit easier if you take a smaller flathead screwdriver and begin to pry up those teeth a little bit. And don't worry if you bend this lock washer, not break it, but bend it. You can hammer it back into shape before you put it back in place. There we go. Set that aside, and then we can open up the central mechanism then. Just gonna pull it off like this. Okay, what you'll find inside then is a plastic piece like this and two small metal pieces like this. I call them S-hooks, but I suppose that's probably not the right word for it. The most common break on this model is that the pegs here will have broken off. So in that case, this is the piece you're gonna need to replace. It is possible to fix this, and we have a video that shows how to kind of hack fix it, but it's a lot harder than just replacing the actual piece. You can order this in multiple places online. You're also going to want to check the inside facing of both this disc and this disc. On this disc, especially look at these notches here around the sides. These notches are where the rectangular or square point of this metal piece locks into place. So the corners should be good and right angled. They shouldn't be worn down, otherwise this piece will just slip right out. This is generally not a problem with the Cameleon 2. It's a problem that occurred a lot more with the Cameleon 3. But you should check it anyway while you have this thing taken apart. You're also going to want to check the inside of this piece, especially at the point of these notches, that there is no breaking in these plastic walls that go around. Again, Cameleon 2, as with the last piece I showed you, generally these inside housings don't have small cracks. If there's any sort of breakage, it's large breaks, but you still want to check because those could be weak points where the metal S-hooks are not able to hold the two discs together. Okay, so reassembly. This is after you have gotten all of the parts you need in order to replace the defective parts. First thing you're going to want to do is take that lock washer and hammer it flat again. Then you're going to want to move on to the stroller itself. If you have some silicone spray, it's a good idea to spray down the inside here first. Take your new disc, I'm assuming the main problem was your disc, and there's a little hole here. That hole needs to fit over the point of this pin that faces upwards. Then you're going to take each of these metal pieces and slot them into that little notch on either side and connect the hole onto the peg. Like this. You can then activate the button. You can see how this works. Okay, now what you're going to want to do is depress the button on the opposite arm, the unaffected arm, in order to slide the whole handle upwards, making sure that the front and back frames are as far apart as possible, but that the handle is going to be more or less aligned in the center of this piece. I find that to be the easiest position at which to do this. Then you're going to lift this up carefully. If those pieces inside that you put together become misaligned, you need to restart the process. And you're going to feel with your finger for that metal central axle and slide it around so that it fits through that hole. And then it's going to slide on like that, and then you're going to press the button on this arm and hold all of these discs together and slide it down until you find the position at which it locks, and then just hold it really, really tight. Okay, now, this is where it gets a bit acrobatic. It's helpful if you have a second person. But holding these discs tightly together so that those pieces don't come out of misalignment, you're now going to need to flip the entire stroller over. You're going to want to lay down a folded over towel or something underneath the metal cap on the opposite side, because we're going to do hammering and we don't want to flatten that out. So hold it all together, flip the whole thing over, lay down your towel, put the cap right on it. And the whole time now you have to hold these discs together while you do everything else. So we're going to take our washer here and we're going to put it on top. And now ideally, what I don't have with me today, ideally if you have a larger pipe that fits around this central axle but will go on top of this locking washer, that's the easiest way in order to kind of apply pressure to all sides of this locking washer to get it in place. If you don't have that, you can use a pair of pliers, as you're going to now see me do. Okay, I'm just using these pliers in order to get around the outside. This is a very fiddly way of doing this. Again, a pipe is better. But I'm holding these discs together with my forearm. There we go. Okay, at this point you would want to test the handle before you put the final cap on to make sure that you can, when you depress both buttons, it folds and then locks back in place. And then you can put the final cap on. So you want to put that on top. If you have a rubber mallet, then you can use that. But what I find to be the best means of putting this back in place is a tablespoon. So you take a tablespoon, and this protects the curve of the dome on that cap. You just put it on top. And then hammer it. There you go. Now it's been closed back up again. Okay, so that is our list of areas to check and how to fix the various components that might be faulty when you're having trouble with the central locking mechanism on the Bugaboo Cameleon 2. We hope that this guide has been helpful to you, and if it has been, we ask that you subscribe, as it helps us to continue making videos in the future. Thank you.